For our daily cancellation today, we have the president of Mexico, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, a man who, among his other problems, has far too many names. His bigger problem, or the bigger problem for the citizens of Mexico, which means by extension that it's a bigger problem for us, is that President AMLO is absurdly corrupt and resides over one of the most corrupt regimes in the world. And on Sunday, he was interviewed by 60 Minutes. The conversation spanned many topics, most of them centering around immigration and related issues, but there was one brief 45-second exchange that deserves a special highlight, I think. The anchor asks the Mexican president about all of the fentanyl being produced and shipped into America by the Mexican cartels, and the president, unsurprisingly, looks to shift the blame immediately, and here's what he says.
The DEA says cartels are mass-producing fentanyl, and the U.S. State Department has said that most of it is coming out of Mexico. Are they wrong?
Sí.
Yes.
No.
Or rather, they don't have all the information, because fentanyl is also produced in the United States.
The State Department says most of it's coming from Mexico.
Fentanyl is produced in the United States, in Canada, and in Mexico, and the chemical precursors come from Asia. You know why we don't have the drug consumption that you have in the United States? Because we have customs, traditions, and we don't have the problem of the disintegration of the family.
So, Mexico's crooked president is asked about the fentanyl that his country is exporting into our country by the ton, and he accepts no special blame for the problem. Instead, tries to pretend that Canada is as much a contributor to the drug epidemic as Mexico. And he also points out that there is fentanyl produced within America as well, which may be true, but doesn't answer the question. Then he points finally and correctly to the disintegration of the nuclear family in the United States and the loss of our culture and traditions. He says that Mexico doesn't have the same drug consumption problem, even if they do have a rather large drug production problem, because they generally keep their families together and they maintain their customs and value their culture. Now, this answer should tick you off rather severely, and in case the reasons aren't obvious, I'll explain. First of all, he presents Mexico as a superior country, one with a healthy family unit and a vibrant culture, but he doesn't explain why his people want to come here if that's the case. If our country really is so bad, then stay in yours. I mean, why come here and add extra strain on a nation that is already strained, according to you? And second, the point he makes about the collapse of the nuclear family and the culture, our culture in America, is true, and I'll get back to that in a moment, but it doesn't answer the question. Like, no matter what our problems are, the fact remains that this guy runs a country that he doesn't actually run. The cartels are in charge, and they're poisoning the entire hemisphere and beyond with fentanyl and myriad other drugs that together kill more Americans in a single year than were killed in every war we fought over the past 60 years combined. That's the fact that he just wants to sort of gently step around it. And third, yes, the American family is in a state of rapid disintegration. What he doesn't mention is that the drugs imported from Mexico have something to do with that problem. Now, having Mexico to our south is like having a giant sewage line spewing filth and poison into our country by the bucket load every second of the day. And the poison, the drugs, have a corrosive effect on everything that they touch, especially the family. And as to the loss of our culture and customs, that can even more so be tied back to the invasion coming from his country and its neighbors. You know, he's proud of Mexico for celebrating its customs and traditions, but it would not have those customs and traditions anymore if he had to deal with the entire third world all across the globe sneaking into his country to set up shop. You know, he may have other third worlders sneaking in, but that's only because they're on their way here to our country. Nobody likes to talk about life insurance, but it's incredibly important to have a good life insurance policy to protect your family should something happen to you. Start shopping now with Policy Genius. Find the right policy to protect your family today and give yourself the peace of mind that comes with knowing that if something were to happen to you, your family could cover all the expenses while getting back on their feet. Policy Genius's technology makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks. If you already have a life insurance policy through work, that might not offer enough protection for your family's needs, and it may not follow you if you leave your job. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius has licensed agents who can help you find the best fit for your needs. When they make it this easy, there's no excuse not to do it. Policy Genius works for you, not the insurance companies. That means they don't have an incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance, save time and money, and give your family a financial safety net with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/Walsh or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Walsh. Earlier in the interview, he said that he doesn't think we should build a wall. Now, the fact that the president of Mexico doesn't want us to have a wall is about as good an argument for building one that anyone can possibly make. But the point is that he doesn't want us to enforce our borders, even as he criticizes us for problems that can be tied directly back to the lack of enforcement on our border. So these are all reasons to be irritated at the Mexican president for his dismissive response to the fentanyl crisis that he is helping to facilitate. But you can only be so angry at him. After all, he's the president of a foreign country. He doesn't care about our country, only vaguely pretends to. Although we can blame him for being corrupt and useless, we can't really blame him for his lack of concern for America, seeing as how he's not American. But that's why that little clip makes me even angrier at our own political leaders, the ones who live here and supposedly represent our people and our interests. We should be angry at them, not only because they're failing to stand up to people like the Mexican president, but because most of them would never say what he just said. Like, leaving aside the hypocrisy, the shirking of responsibility, all of that, he is, again, completely correct that our national drug problem has everything to do with the collapse of the family unit and the loss of our culture and traditions. The president of a foreign country is willing to speak that truth, however self-servingly it might be, but our own president would never, and most of our politicians at every level of government would never and have never said that. There is a vanishingly small collection of American politicians who would point out, and have pointed out, that the nuclear family has been destroyed and every societal problem can be traced back to its destruction. You know, this should be a point that all of our leaders speak about constantly and work urgently to address. It should be treated as a 5-alarm fire, as a national emergency, because that's what it is. But not only will most of them not treat it as an emergency, most of them won't even acknowledge it, or else they'll flat out deny that it's happening. Now, as to the loss of our culture and our traditions, I think there's an even smaller collection of American political leaders who will ever discuss that, and an even smaller collection still would ever draw a connection between that and a real-world problem like the drug epidemic. But there is a connection. There's a glaringly obvious connection. Culture is identity. Identity is meaning. Without meaning, there is despair, and in despair, people turn to drugs. Not because it will give them meaning, but because it will numb their minds and their souls to the pain of a life lived without it. You know, we were not losing tens of thousands of Americans every year to drug overdoses back when America had a cultural identity, back when we had our own customs and traditions, back when we knew our history and valued it and celebrated it. Now we have none of that, at least not on a collective level. And instead, we have the tens of thousands of drug deaths. This is not a coincidence, but it's a point that almost none of our leaders have ever made or will ever make. They leave it to the president of Mexico to point that out. And for that reason, he, and also they, are today canceled. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.